John Henry was born back in the 1800s, before all Americans were free. There was a time when blacks and African Americans were not treated as equals, but instead were owned as slaves. When John Henry was a baby, he and the rest of the slaves in the United States were freed by Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. John Henry and his family moved west to help build a railroad, but when John Henry was just 5 years old, he picked up a hammer and a piece of steel and cried, "This hammer is going to be the death of me." This is the story of John Henry. John Henry was a little baby, sitting on his daddy's knee. He picked up a hammer and a little piece of steel and cried, "The hammer's gonna be the death of me, Lord, Lord. This hammer's gonna be the death of me." Railroads connected the United States coast to coast, but it took hard work. John Henry started working on the railroads when he was still a child. He worked hard and was forced to grow up too quickly. By the time John Henry was 20, he was over 6 feet tall and could swing a hammer so fast it looked like lightning. Despite the work of John Henry and the other workers, the foreman wanted to make the work go faster. So he bought a steam drill to hammer instead of John Henry. Now the captain, he said to John Henry, "I'm gonna bring that steam drill around. I'm gonna bring that steam drill out on these tracks. I'm gonna knock that steel on down. Oh yeah, I'm gonna knock that steel on down." When John Henry heard the captain's plan, he couldn't help but smile. He knew this machine could take his and his fellow workers' jobs, but he rolled up his sleeves, picked up his hammer, and was determined to beat this machine. John Henry, he told his captain, "Lord, a man ain't nothing but a man. But 'fore I let that steam drill beat me down, I'm gonna die with a hammer in my hand. Lord, Lord, I'll die with this hammer in my hand." John Henry, he was driving on the right side. That steam drill was driving on the left. Says, "'Fore I let your steam drill beat me down, I'm gonna hammer myself to death. Lord, Lord, I'll hammer my fool self to death." John Henry and the steam engine worked all day and all night until the sun was starting to rise again. John Henry was swinging his hammer with such force that sparks flew whenever he struck the stake. Sweat poured down his brow and smoke bellowed from the engine. John Henry's breathing was hard and the engine choked and sputtered as it went. John Henry saw the engine moving past him and refused to be beaten, so he increased his already incredible speed. For every time the steam engine struck once, John Henry struck 3 times. Well, the captain, he said to John Henry, "What is that storm I hear?" John Henry said, "That ain't no storm, Cap. That's just my hammer in the air. Lord, Lord, that's just my hammer in the air." The sun was starting to set on the second day of the race, and the two were near the finish line. Pounding away, the steam drill had gained on John Henry and nearly taken the lead. But with his last ounce of strength, John Henry drove his steel in with a single blow. But he had worked so hard that when he laid down his hammer, he fell to the ground, dead. John Henry, he hammered in the mountains. His hammer was striking fire. But he worked so hard it broke his heart. John Henry laid his hammer down and died. Lord, Lord, John Henry laid his hammer down and died. John Henry beat the steam engine. Some versions tell of his wife Polly taking over for him after his death to beat the engine. Others say the engine exploded before the end, killing John Henry. And other versions, like this one, simply say that John Henry beat the steam engine and died of exertion or of a heart attack. This story is what we call a tall tale. It is almost certainly based off of a real man named John Henry, who was a steel driver for a railroad, possibly near the Big Bend Tunnel in West Virginia. But parts have almost certainly been exaggerated over time. It is a story of pride for African Americans and working class people alike. Although it is embellished, it tells a story of a man's perseverance against all odds, who sacrifices himself to save the livelihoods of himself and his fellow workers. Well, every Monday morning, when a bluebird he begins to sing, you can hear John Henry for a mile or more. You can hear John Henry's hammer ring, Lord, Lord. You can hear John Henry's hammer ring.